going to make the tailgate block now. The first thing where you're really going to need to have the certain color of thread will be the truck. My truck is going to be red, so I'm going to put red bobbin and red top thread in the machine. Tearaway stabilizer in the hoop, and I'm going to put the hoop in the machine, load the design, and I'm just going to start the design. And the first thing that's going to stitch will be a placement line for where my background fabric will be placed. The machine will baste the background square down onto the stabilizer. Before I put the background fabric in though, I have put some Pendant Shape Flex 101 fusible on the back side of the block, and what this does is it just acts like a secondary stabilizer. It helps to prevent a lot of puckering, you know, and the fabric drawing in a lot. So I'm going to place my block inside the placement square that was stitched out. I'm just going to start the button and it'll base stitch this square in place. Now I recommend that you put some tape in the corners. Because I do all the digitizing, I know how the design is going to stitch, so I'm not going to do that. Now it doesn't matter that these stitches are red because they're going to be removed later. The next thing that's going to happen, the machine will stitch the outline for my fabric for the truck. What I've done is I've cut a piece of fabric. I think it's 7 inches by 4.5 inches. That information's in your pattern, so double check that. I put a piece of batting on the back because I like the fabric to be a little puffy, and or the applique to be a little fluffy. And then I'm going to go ahead and lay that down. Again, I want you to tape the edges so that you don't run over your fingers. I'm not going to do that. And then just start the button and it will tack the fabric in place. The stitches go around twice to give you a really secure, so it really secures it, and also so when you trim away this excess fabric, it's a little bit easier because everything's really nice and secure to the background fabric. I placed my hoop, I've removed my hoop from the machine, and I placed it on a flat surface, and now I'm just going to trim away this excess fabric with some really, really sharp scissors. The idea is to trim really, really close to the stitches without cutting through them. And then you can go ahead, when you're finished with that, go ahead and place your hoop back into the machine. So before I actually put my hoop back in the machine, I changed my bobbin and my top thread to black because the tires are going to stitch next. Next thing to stitch will be some little gray detail here and a little light gray detail here, just to kind of define the tire. So go ahead and take I'm using kind of a light gray. If you want to put that in your bobbin and your top thread, do so now. So the next thing that's going to stitch is a little definition to kind of define what's the inside of the, the bed of the truck. I'm going to use like a little charcoal gray to do my defining. You could do red or whatever color you want to do. One of the things that helps me with all these bobbin changes and thread changes is I know kind of what colors I'm using: red, grays, black, white, a little bit of green. So I go ahead and I wind a bobbin for all these different colors. That way I don't have to keep winding bobbins. So go ahead and put your gray thread in your machine, start your machine, and it will define the inside of the truck. The windshield is going to stitch next. I'm making my windshield white, so put white bobbin and white top thread in your machine and start the machine. The word tailgate will stitch next. Now I just decided to make my lettering blue, although my team's colors are the Buckeye, scarlet, and gray. But I thought blue would just add a little bit more color to my quilt. So whatever color you want to do your lettering in, go ahead and put that in the bobbin and top thread and start the machine. So the inside of my truck bed is going to be like a chrome color. So I've changed my top and bobbin thread to chrome, and it's just going to kind of cover this area up with some thread. Part that's going to stitch will be like a little fill stitch that goes up and down right through here. Now normally I make that the same color silver, but for today I think I'm going to do it in red just because I think it kind of looks cute in the red, and because I can. So I'm going to put red bobbin in my bobbin and red thread in the top, and I'm going to stitch it out. There will also be like later a satin stitch that goes all around the truck, so it may be redundant, but I want to see what it looks like. Flagpole is going to stitch next. I'm changing my bobbin to brown and my top thread to brown, and then start the machine and it will stitch the flagpole. Pendant flag is going to stitch next, so my background is going to be gray because my I'll explain that in a minute. So let's just go ahead and change your bobbin and your top thread to the color you want for your background for your flag, and then just start the machine. I thought it would be fun to have a different color going around the edge of the flag. So I've changed my bobbin and top thread to red, and I'm going to do the outline stitches in red on my flag. You could keep it the same color if you wanted. The next thing to stitch is the outline around the truck. If you have a red truck, go ahead and put red bobbin in your bobbin area and red top thread and just start the machine, and it's going to stitch the satin stitches all the way around the truck. Well, that was not fun. You can probably see my thread is doing a little shreddy thing here. Let's see, yep. Yep, look at that, just shredded it all up. That tells me it's time for a new needle, because thread, it's not that the needle itself gets dull, the tip of the needle, well, it can, but usually what happens when your thread starts doing that is there is so much thread that runs back and forth through the eye of the needle that it actually starts creating little burrs in the metal. So when that happens, change your thread, or not your thread, change your needle. Another little trick that I do is I take a container, this is like a makeup jar for my moisture surge, and what I do is I put all my old needles in there, and then, you know, eventually it will be full, and when it's full, then I'll take the whole thing and just toss it into the trash can. That way the sanitation workers, they won't get poked with your sewing needles. Just a little tip. Okay, I backed up my stitches, about 20 stitches, and because it was a little shreddy there, and I'm going to just start the machine again. The very next thing to stitch out is going to be the lettering Go Team, tiny lettering. I'm going to leave mine red because just because I want red, so I'm just going to start the machine. If you're changing the color of your lettering, be sure you change your bobbin and your top thread. The last thing to stitch is going to be little tufts of green grass. So put green in your bobbin, green in your top thread, and start your machine. Alright, your block is finished. Flip it over and remove this basting stitch. Remember, it's always easier to take out stitches on the bobbin side. So go ahead and flip it over, take out the stitches, and then your block is ready to be incorporated into your quilt. I want to point out one more thing to you guys. The stabilizer is kind of tricky to get out in between the lettering. You know, get what you can out and just leave the rest in there. It's not going to kill your project, and after all, this is supposed to be fun, not, you know, aggravating. So just get what you can out, but don't sweat it if there's still some left in there.